Chapter 1857. Bird in a Cage. Zhang Yi was suddenly shocked. He didn't expect that he would be discovered so quickly. Sure enough, in this place, no matter which opponent you face, you have to be extra careful. Zhang Yi appeared from the void without any hesitation and opened the dimensional door to move away from the area. With his ability, no one can stop him as long as he wants to escape. But Pokong seemed to have known about Zhang Yi's abilities for a long time. Everyone looked towards Zhang Yi in midair. Even the two people who were fighting cast murderous glances at the enemy who came to spy on them. Pokong was the first to move. He rushed up into the sky wearing black armor, then opened his big hands towards Zhang Yi. He was more than 5 meters tall and looked like a giant. The palm opened, and threads emitting white light were released from the palm in an instant, covering the space where Zhang Yi was like a huge net. It is like a fisherman casting his fishing net, or like a god casting a cage. In an instant, the space where Zhang Yi was located was blocked. Zhang Yi was originally planning to cross this space and return to a safe area. But he was shocked to find that his dimensional door seemed to have encountered an insurmountable barrier and was difficult to pass through. Zhang Yi had to emerge from the dimensional gate halfway, and he saw his current situation. An enormous bird cage, emitting white light and carrying a terrifying murderous intent, completely sealed him off between heaven and earth. The railings emitting white light give people a feeling of being as sharp as a knife. Pokong was hanging high in the sky, looking coldly at Zhang Yi in front of him, and said to him in human language, "Do you really think this trick can escape my eyes?" Zhang Yi's heart slowly sank. At this moment, he deeply realized that he had underestimated the enemy he was facing. Anyone who can hold on to this level is at the top of the pyramid in the current world of extraordinary people, and no one is allowed to be underestimated. However, even so, he would not be trapped so easily by others. There is only one explanation for this situation. The other party has already prepared for his arrival. From the familiar standard armor on Pokong, Zhang Yi knew who he was. Perhaps the two had never met him before, but he must be from the Wulwan Empire without a doubt, because his body shape, armor, and aura were all too familiar. Zhang Yi sneered. "I didn't expect that in the eyes of the Wulwan Empire, my status is so important. They actually sent a strange person who can deal with me." Pokong's expression hidden under the mask changed slightly, because Zhang Yi hit the nail on the head. At the beginning, the Grand Marshal of the Wulwan Empire personally led the expedition, and the outcome of the battle was originally a foregone conclusion. However, they were defeated because of the intervention of the Dragon Clan under the Qinling Mountains. After the Grand Marshal returned, few of these humans left a deep impression on him. If I have to say, there is only one guy who can control time and space. Originally, the gatekeeper of the underworld planned to capture Zhang Yi and bring him back to make him into a puppet, but unfortunately he failed. But that kind of abnormal talent and ability still left a deep impression on him. He once said this to Pokong. In the human world, there are very few truly powerful aliens. However, these insects have a terrifying ability to evolve. They will quickly adapt to disasters. Even if only a small number of them survive, powerful individuals will evolve from them. Among these people, the one he regretted most not killing was Zhang Yi. So when Pokong left the Wulwan Empire and headed to Fremons to enter the Light Gate, he specifically studied Zhang Yi's information. This move, Bird in a Cage, was specially prepared for Zhang Yi. King Arthur and others have surrounded him. They stare at Zhang Yi, who is trapped in the cage with murderous intent. "Hundun, you are too conceited. You really think you are invincible and even dare to spy on us. What a pity." King Arthur said this, sighing deeply and looking very disappointed. "I originally thought that you were an opponent worthy of my attention, but I didn't expect you to be so reckless. It turns out that you are just a reckless man with empty martial arts. You are really useless. Kill him," Odin said. Zhang Yi looked around at the cage that trapped him. He could feel a strange force preventing him from traveling through space. But he was not panicked at all. He just glanced at everyone around him calmly. Finally, he looked towards King Arthur with a faint smile on his face. You still don't know me well enough. I am chaos, and I will never risk my life in my life. The sound of breaking air came coldly from the sky. You are still so self-righteous even at this point? The spatial ability you are so proud of cannot penetrate my cage at all. So now, your fate is already determined. Jangi didn't say much. 1 against 6, he wouldn't be stupid enough to force a fight with so many people. So the next moment, he disappeared. The moment he disappeared, he appeared outside the cage. In the corner of Jangi's left eye, a glimmer of light flashed by. Goodbye. After he finished speaking, he left the area at the speed of light. He just disappeared like that, and everyone was dumbfounded by what had just happened, as if they had experienced an illusion. No one saw what happened, but Jangi suddenly disappeared from the cage, and then suddenly appeared in another place. Pokong was stunned and couldn't believe his eyes. First of all, he was very sure of how much his bird in a cage would limit his spatial abilities. Space-related abilities require the opening of dimensional gates for displacement. However, there was no feeling of delay during Jangi's disappearance, as if he had teleported. How on earth did he break into my caged bird? I didn't sense any energy fluctuations. Pokong was stunned and stood there. King Arthur's gaze also became much deeper, staring in the direction where Jangi left. Only the king of the mechanical civilization, Ichigo, had complex data streams flashing in his eyes, as if he was trying to capture some traces. But in the end, he didn't say anything. The 6 people just watched Jangi escape right under their noses. This was something difficult to accept for the 6 powerful aliens. If it weren't for the special period now, they would definitely chase after him and fight Jangi to the death. Odin took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Should we go to war with them?" Judging from their strength on paper, their team should have the weakest combat capability. King Arthur frowned and said, "Don't underestimate our opponent. Chaos's ability is extremely difficult to deal with. Even if we can win, it will consume a lot of time and energy because of his existence. But then, our main camp could be attacked by another team." Odin snorted coldly. "But we can't just do nothing. There are only 7 days, and we are still fighting over who will be the leader." His voice was very loud, as if he was venting his inner dissatisfaction. Olib stood aside, holding the holy sword, and spoke slowly. "In the current situation, whoever starts a war first will be at a disadvantage. Fortunately, we don't have a lot of troops. Otherwise, we would not be able to win if we were so disorganized." King Arthur spread his hands and asked, "What good ideas do you have?" As he spoke, his eyes were fixed on Olib, and it was obvious that he was on guard against Olib. Even if they are teammates temporarily, they will become enemies next time. Conflicts of faith have always been extremely cruel since ancient times. Olib looked at the other people. From beginning to end, the mysterious man in the black robe did not say a word. However, Pokong and Ichigo are clearly not human, and they have very little communication with them. Especially Ichigo, the human camp had strong hostility towards him. But right now, even though everyone has various complicated relationships, they have to unite and fight. Perhaps this is also one of the tests that managers put on them. When faced with common problems, even races with various conflicts need to temporarily put aside their differences and unite. Oliba thought for a moment and slowly said, "It is extremely unwise to fight 2 against 1. Assuming that everyone's ability index is equal, the possibility of us defeating the combined forces of the other 2 is very low. So the best way is to use the false way to destroy Gua. First, join forces with 1, then eliminate the other. Finally, eliminate the remaining 1. And judging from the current situation on the battlefield, the Chaos team has the weakest overall strength and poses the least threat to us, so they're the ones we need to unite with." No one found anything wrong with Olib's analysis. But Odin still raised questions. Chaos and the others are not fools. Since they know the end, we will definitely destroy them. How could they agree to join forces with us? If I were them, I would choose to join forces with Mirana's team. First, we would eliminate the strongest team and then compete with Mirana's team, which is relatively weaker. Olive said, so, we have to win over the Chaos team in advance. We must give them enough benefits. This interest is not the interest within the battlefield, but outside the battlefield. They need to voluntarily give up the fight for the treasures of the god-level civilization and promise to give them sufficient compensation from the outside world after they leave. When Odin, King Arthur, and Olive said this, they couldn't help but look at the other three. These three don't seem to be strong people in the human camp. Therefore, they must also make a gesture by giving up their interests. A sneer appeared on Ichigo's face. In order to obtain the treasure of the great god-level civilization, he sacrificed his entire civilization. Once he leaves this world, he will definitely start a massive slaughter in the human world. By then, who in the human world will be able to stop him? And he still needs to show his sincerity. It's a joke. I don't agree with you, Ichigo said in a cold voice. Odin and the other two humans all had solemn looks on their faces. They themselves did not have much good feelings towards Ichigo. Since we are the most powerful party, we have the initiative on the battlefield, and everyone in this team is also the best of their respective races. He raised the corners of his mouth and spoke in a loud and confident voice. So what if my strength is suppressed? The reason why a strong person is strong is not just because of his own energy level. To deal with the chaos you mentioned, only 3 people are needed to defeat them directly. He looked at the black-robed man and Pokong. What do you think? Do you support my proposals? Odin, King Arthur, and Olive's faces turned a little ugly. At this moment, they finally understood that from the very beginning, Ichigo had never taken them seriously. To Ichigo, humans are just simple and weak creatures. Even though they were restricted by the rules of this world and their energy levels were at the same level, Ichigo still did not take them seriously. Not to mention Jangi's team, which looks very weak. Ichigo is not a madman, he is a king, and he has his own judgment in doing so. Because what makes him different from others is that he is not only a powerful person, but also the king of the most advanced mechanical civilization. The technological power in him, this extremely powerful armor and weapon system, can give him extraordinary power, even in this world. Just as Liu Karen said to Jangi, machines can be overclocked. The more powerful the machine, the greater the overclocking range, and the longer it can be maintained. This is also the biggest reason why Ichigo does not take King Arthur and others seriously. He simply disdains to bow to humans, and he believes in his own strength. What an arrogant fellow! Odin scolded in a low voice. Ichigo gave him a cold look and said, if you weren't still useful for the time being, I would have killed you long ago. Odin's eyes turned cold, and the spear of eternity in his hand condensed into infinite thunder. The sky was roaring, and the silver-white lightning enveloped him, making people awe-inspiring like a real god. Kill me? Do you think you can do it now? The atmosphere at the scene was tense, and there seemed to be an urge to fight if there was any disagreement. But at this moment, several people suddenly keenly felt that there were 2 powerful forces colliding in the distance. The distance between the 3 cities is 500 kilometers, which is not a short distance and can span several cities. However, as top-notch warriors, they are equipped with the most advanced weapon systems. When the powerful energy fluctuations erupted in the distance, the instruments and equipment immediately felt the unusual fluctuations. Odin and Ichigo also stopped what they were doing and looked into the distance. What's going on? Could it be that their people started fighting first? Odin frowned, as if he had not expected that someone would be more anxious than them. That's a good thing. King Arthur spoke softly, his eyes burning. Whether they fight among themselves for leadership or the 2 forces go to war, it's all good for us. Jangi could never have imagined that after he had been away for a while, a fierce battle broke out between his city and Mirana's team when he came back. In a vast and empty desert, 2 aliens collided violently. The soldiers wearing green armor from Jangi's team also fought fiercely, with the soldiers wearing red armor from Mirana's team. On this battlefield, the 2 sides fighting were Liangyu and Alexei. Liangyu, holding a spear, collided with Alexei, who was like a mad beast and was wrapped in thunder. Zhang Yi's heart was pounding. Things had gone beyond his expectations. He originally wanted to proceed step by step, defeat both sides one by one, and reap the greatest benefits for himself. But who could have thought that it would be their side that would be the first to start the war? Puff! Blood splattered in the sky. Jangi rushed over quickly. When he arrived at the battlefield, he saw two bodies falling from the sky. Zhang eyes suddenly focused, and then a surge of anger instantly rushed straight to the top of his head. Even though he knew that he could be resurrected in the outside world after dying here, he still couldn't control his emotions when he saw Yangyu being split in half. Alexei held two axes in his hands. The angrier he got in tyrant mode, the more powerful he became. At this moment, he didn't care about anything except killing his opponent, not even his own life. Even though they were once close friends, they are now mortal enemies. When Zhang Yi approached, Liangyu's life breath had disappeared, turning into a stream of light and disappearing into the sky. His mood was both angry and heavy. On the first day, one of the most important fighting forces around him died in battle. Zhang Yi summoned Shen Lian without any hesitation to fight with Purin. But at this moment, a cold chill woke him up like a basin of ice water. Alexei is not the only one on this battlefield. Winter Goddess, Morana folded her arms in the distance and looked at Zhang Yi coldly. Now, it's 1 against 2. It was unknown if the rest of Morana's team was nearby, but even if they were, they couldn't be all of them, because they also need to guard the house. Brother, come back. Yang Xinxin's voice sounded in the communication channel. Zhang Yi was still furious and was planning to ask Yang Xinxin what was going on. But he soon remembered what he had promised Yang Xinxin. Since it has been decided that Yang Xinxin will be the commander-in-chief and command everything on the battlefield, then we must obey her orders. What's more, Liangyu died in the battle, and he was in a state of anger and could not guarantee that he could maintain his sanity to fight. If he had a conflict with the other two at this time, he would be putting himself in an extremely unfavorable environment. That's not his style. Zhang Yi took a deep breath and said, "Well done, Alexei Morana." Zhang Yi gave them a look with a sneer, then opened the dimensional door and rushed towards the city, without looking back. Alexei shrugged. The relationship is good, but this is a war, so there is no possibility of talking about feelings. In this chaotic situation, whoever makes the first move will be at a disadvantage. Morana said calmly. The fact that Zhang Yi went to the city of King Arthur's team to spy on intelligence did not escape their eyes and ears. So, after confirming that the opponent's strongest force had left, Morana's team immediately launched a raid on their city. On the first day, they achieved results. One member of Zhang Yi's team was eliminated. Alexei walked over to Morana on the sand, but scratched his head and whispered, "Why do I feel that it is so easy to get rid of their team members this time?" Morana's icy blue eyes glanced at Alexei. "There's nothing strange about that. Everyone is careless sometimes." After saying that, she looked around cautiously before turning and leaving. Alexei thought about it, nodded, and followed her footsteps and left. The people here are all top-notch extraordinary warriors in the world. But being powerful does not mean being omniscient and omnipotent. They're just better at fighting, but not all of them are very smart, and not all of them are good at marching and fighting. If I have to say, the current situation is more like playing the Three Kingdoms chess game. It is most important to weigh the pros and cons and proceed cautiously. Zhang Yi returned to his city, which was still under construction, and Liu Karen did not stop his work. Except for the hundreds of casualties in the recent battle, the remaining 5,000 soldiers were guarding here. Yang Xinxin welcomed Zhang Yi's return. "Brother, you're back." Zhang Yi took a few deep breaths to calm himself down from the shock. "Xinxin, why did you start a fight with the other party just now?" Yang Xinxin just replied calmly. "The start of a war requires a fuse. Otherwise, it will be a balance where no one is willing to take the first step. If we want to win the final victory, we must break this balance." Zhang Yi seemed to understand, so Liangyu's death in battle was also within your calculations. Yang Xinxin is not a fool. Since the real city is in Zhang Yi's alien space, there is no need for them to defend it to the death. Even if Morana's team attacks, they can just call themselves Liu Karen's Snowy Owl and escape. There is no need to fight to the death. So there is only one explanation, that Liang Yu's participation in the war and even his death in the battle were all planned by Yang Xinxin. Yang Xinxin's voice was cold. Teacher Liang ranks last in terms of importance in our team. Without her, our team's actual combat effectiveness will not be greatly affected, but other teams will think that we are even less threatening when we already look weak. So, now we are the last thing on their mind. They are only thinking about how to win us over and kill the other team. Zhang Yi said in his heart, "Is it really necessary to go to this extent?" Zhang Yi felt a little pained after losing one of his team members. He was used to doing things in a way that it would be best if he could remain unscathed. But he also understood that since this was a complicated war, necessary sacrifices were unavoidable, so he did not express his opinion. "I still say the same thing. Just you arrange everything. If necessary, I can be sacrificed." Zhang Yi's eyes were serious, and he was not joking. Yang Xinxin smiled. "Brother, what are you talking about? You are the key to our team. With you here, even if everyone else dies in battle, it won't affect the final outcome.